Imminent typhoon threats for China, Taiwan and Hong Kong on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for September 1st. So a new month, but a lot of the same old storms are still active, and no real developments since yesterday, but a few storms are weakening, and Saola has looked quite a bit better in the last few hours as it gets closer to the coast of southern China. We are code red for two of those typhoons right now. Day 93 of Atlantic hurricane season though, and Franklin still a hurricane, Idalia a remnant extratropical storm but likely to become a tropical storm again near Bermuda, Jose, which is going to be a short-lived system, a 90% chance in the eastern Atlantic and a 30% in that area in the central Atlantic. Day 109 in the Eastern Pacific, and a surprise, an area of interest that has really looked better in the last few hours, now 60% in the Central Pacific, although the Central Pacific Hurricane Center have not so far noticed it. 20% there in the Eastern Pacific later on in that period. Saola getting very close to the coast of China now, and dangerous for the whole region there into Hong Kong and Macau. Haikui is heading towards Taiwan and could make a typhoon landfall there, and Kirogi moving towards the north as a tropical storm struggling with wind shear. Two other areas of interest could develop there next week, meaning that we've got a very busy Western Pacific and a quiet Indian Ocean there with no areas of interest. Looking at Saola then, it is only 120 kilometers from Jiazi, and despite that it is still a category 4 with winds of 145 miles per hour. Orange typhoon warnings in effect, and a warning number 8 for Hong Kong. It's 144 kilometers from Shanwei, 222 from Hong Kong, 288 from Macau and 345 from Guangdong. All of these locations are expecting substantial impacts with a potential storm surge and heavy rainfall which could cause flooding and landslides. Idalia is an extratropical cyclone, but a tropical storm watch is in effect for Bermuda. It is 323 kilometers away from Cape Hatteras, 783 still though from Bermuda, 844 from New York City, 941 from Nantucket and 1515 from Halifax. This system is eventually expected to redevelop as a tropical storm, but the National Hurricane Center expect that it will once again become an extratropical cyclone by the time we get to day 5. And taking a look at Typhoon Haikui, which is now up to around 80 miles per hour and a pressure in the 970s. It is 514 kilometers from Naha, 570 from Miyakojima, 646 from Ishigaki, 915 from Taipei and 988 from Kaohsiung City in Taiwan. No warnings as far as I can see in Taiwan yet, but there are heavy rain advisories. There is blue typhoon warnings in effect for parts of China, northern Fujian and southern Zhejiang provinces, and a gale advisory still in effect for the Daito Islands of Japan, but not yet for the western parts of the Ryukyus. So an extremely busy period right now, but the primary threat, I would say, if we're going to rank them, satellite imagery looking at Saola, which is still looking very impressive, a donut-shaped eye there, sort of like a tire rolling along as it continues westwards towards the coast of China and Hong Kong. Very dangerous storm right now, still a very impressive eye and eye wall structure. Cloud tops well into the -70s, closing in on -80s in a few spots. We're just looking out for when that weakening will begin, and when it does commence, it will probably be very quick once it gets going. But look at that radar imagery right now. Two things to note there, still looking very impressive in near the center, but also could that be a secondary eye wall starting to take place, and maybe an eye wall replacement cycle which will topple that house of cards. Well, there's a quick look at Idalia there, extratropical cyclone and looking very poor, 60 miles per hour though I believe still at this time. And here is Haikui right now. You can just about see the Japanese islands towards the north there, really blowing up still with massive cloud tops well into the minus 80s and 90s, but still struggling with wind shear. Here's another look at Kirogi, which is also really struggling with wind shear, partially exposed now, so struggling there after it was looking really good last night on the bulletin. And this here is Jose, tiny tropical cyclone, but it really is a tropical storm, and it probably will last for a little bit longer before dying off. And a quick another look there at that radar of the impending closing in Typhoon Saola. Wow, so much to talk about tonight. Eastern Pacific, still very warm sea surface temperatures off the coast of Mexico and out on a narrow corridor in the deep tropics of the Pacific. The Atlantic still looking very hot, even in the areas of the Gulf impacted by Idalia, still well above 30 degrees Celsius in a few spots. And where it is right now in the Gulf Stream, still warm temperatures, a little bit cooler now between the US East Coast and Bermuda, temperatures around 27 degrees though probably, and in the Eastern Atlantic still looking okay as well. Western Pacific, one or two little cool spots near the Ogasawara Islands, but in the hot spots right now, South China Sea and the Philippine Sea, very warm, where Saola is 30 degrees, pushing 31 degrees, dropping to about 29 when it gets closer to land. North Indian Ocean is pretty cool, around about 28-29 degrees Celsius in the Bay of Bengal. That will pick up again in about a month, and the Arabian Sea also has some catching up to do. Southwest Indian Ocean, well into its off-season, the middle of winter right now for the sea surface temperatures, and they'll start to recover soon. Australian region as well, similar story there, 26 degrees still off the coast of a few spots there in Australia, and in the South Pacific, Fiji holding on to 26 degrees Celsius in the Northern Islands, and the same story there for Vanuatu. The anomalies show that it's well above average in the South China Sea, and that's what will really be helping Saola right now. Where Haikui is, it's around average, a little bit above there, and further east it's around average as well for Kirogi. Eastern Pacific looking pretty decent in the far east, the Atlantic looking very good out in the deep tropics in the central Atlantic, and still along the Gulf Coast well above average 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. Where Franklin is, temperatures have decreased a little bit behind it, dropping to around 0 to 1 degrees above. Western Caribbean still with an enormous amount of oceanic heat content into the Gulf of Mexico and extending into the Eastern Caribbean as well. Eastern Pacific still looking decent off the coast of Mexico and another little spot there further out to sea. And in the Western Pacific, that really long corridor, very warm OHC content, very high amounts all the way, and a few spots off Taiwan as well, which will help Haikui. Computer models then, the Atlantic is an abundance of activity and a bit of a mess going on here. The remnants of Gert are what we've circled there, as well as another area of interest which could develop in the Eastern Atlantic. In fact, we've given very high chances for it as we watch the other systems trail away. Franklin on a straightforward weakening trend, and of course we've got Idalia, which could do anything after it moves through Bermuda and towards the north there. There's that Central Pacific system, that surprise, and there's the GFS running with it, a borderline tropical cyclone. ECMWF, you might argue, is even better looking for that system, although possibly not tropical storm, and the CMC does have a fully fledged tropical storm within just 12 hours. So something to watch there in the Central Pacific right now, and could it be that Hone really sneaky if it does manage to do it? In the Western Pacific for that same period, we've obviously got Saola, which rapidly weakens after it reaches land, but could still impact Hong Kong with Category 1 or 2 winds. And then you've got Haikui making a Category 1 or 2 landfall in Taiwan by the looks of things. I'm even losing my sentences here. And Kirogi moving towards the north there through the northern Ogasawara Islands, and then another system forming behind that, swirling around, and then another system within the 5-day period forming there as well, becoming another tropical storm. So it's really storm spam there in the Western Pacific. One of the main concerns for Saola, of course, is storm surge, but also rainfall expectations and the potential that Haikui behind it could track into some of the same areas that dropped rain for Saola. So we're looking at rainfall maximums that could get very high in parts of eastern Guangdong and southern Fujian provinces in China, but in southern Guangdong there we're looking at expected maximums of around 7 to 9 inches of rainfall, getting towards 10 inches there, 250 millimeters, 7 inches in Hong Kong, that's nearly 200 millimeters. But look at the amounts further east, 19 inches in a few spots in eastern China, and 20 inches for parts of Taiwan over the mountains. That is 500 millimeters, which could cause serious flooding and landslides in both of those areas. Longer range, day 5 to 10, Atlantic looks like this. You can still see Idalia flailing around there in the North Atlantic, and not sure what's happening next with that. But after that, a system developing in the Eastern Atlantic, becoming a mature hurricane there, extending out towards day 10. Will that happen? Question mark. Well, I think there's a decent chance given the time of year, but it does look like it will safely recurve away from any land areas, unlike what some people are suggesting possibly. In the Eastern Pacific, another system potentially developing there as well, possibly within the 5-day period. We gave that a 20% chance, but later on in that run, that's actually a second system there developing towards the end. The first one goes away as a borderline tropical depression or storm, maybe. There it is, moving along. And then near the end of day 10 there, that second system becoming a much better looking tropical cyclone just off the coast of Mexico. By the time we get to the 10th borderline hurricane, we'll see what happens. Western Pacific, obviously very difficult to predict even beyond 5 days at the moment. It's a very complex situation. I was looking at even the model ensembles for Haikui the other day, and it was even at 24 hours. There was a massive spread, about the same length as Taiwan. But looking at the longer range there towards day 10, that storm moving into Kyushu, maybe another one trying to form as it moves up towards Japan, another one forming there near the Ogasawara Islands, and maybe even one there in the South China Sea that tries to get some rotation. Goodness me, really large amounts of storm potential there in the Western Pacific. Scan the barcode on the top right and that will take you to the Force 13 merch store where you can shop for our products and are still waiting for Hone t-shirt. Is it an endangered species? Well, the Central Pacific Hurricane Center might have to rule on that one. In the Scilly range then, we'll watch the continuation of that significant hurricane there in the Atlantic, possibly getting to Category 4 status, but it does recurve quite conclusively there on that latest GFS model, right out towards the north-northeast at the end of day 16. So that's not a land impact, but something that may bear watching as it gets closer towards the reasonable model run range. In the Eastern Pacific, that hurricane continues off the coast of western Mexico, and could it make a run for the Baja California Peninsula? Well, yes, tropical storm force winds there, but it's not going to be a Hillary. It dies off as it stops just off the coast of Baja California Sur. Just hits a stop sign and decides to completely die off as it loses its momentum and eventually drifts towards land once again as a probably depression or remnant, but that is extremely far out, nearly day 16 there. What more surprises in the Western Pacific then for that 16-day period in the super long range? Not really, it's just a very unsettled period there, with storms trying to form left, right and centre around a much larger Gaia system that's been lasting quite a while there, and a little system that could become a typhoon right at the end of that loop there that tries to form near eastern Micronesia, and that could end up becoming another system, but extremely long range. I wouldn't look into it just now. Of course, during some of that model run period, I'm in that area on Force 13's Eastern Tour. We're in Athens, Singapore, Cebu and Hong Kong during the course of the early to mid-September. So if you want to join us for a meet and greet, we'll be there. Send us a message, contact@force13.com or through our social media. You can also get in touch on Discord and join our server, discord.gg/force13, where you can chat with over 3,700 tropical weather fans and other weather fans from around the world. On this day last year, you don't need a great memory to remember Typhoon Hinnamnor, which peaked as an extraordinary Category 5, more extraordinary because of its track more than anything, doing that big loop-the-loop and then moving through the southern Ryukyu Islands and into the East China Sea. Category 5 on this day, a beautiful image there from the International Space Station. We also had Tropical Depression 11E in the Eastern Pacific, and I can't remember what name that was going to become, but I'm sure some people with better memories will let me know in the comments what happened to that one. That was on this day last year. Back to today, we are code red for both Western Pacific typhoons, but the next name in the Atlantic now is Katia. In the Eastern Pacific it's Hova, and in the Central Pacific it is still Hone. Will the CPHC notice? In the Western Pacific the next name now is Yun Yung. In the North Indian Ocean it's Tej. 51 storms so far this year around the world, the average annually is 92. In the Southern Hemisphere, the next name in the Australian region is Jasper, forgot for a moment, Southwest Indian Ocean, Alvaro, and the South Pacific, it's Lola. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.